Welcome to Overwatch. This time we'll be talking about Sombra, the newly unveiled hero from BlizzCon, who she is, what she does and how she fits into your team lineup. If you're unfamiliar, I've done this kind of thing for just about every character released and been, well, correct on pretty much every account. So do strap in and let's have a look at her kit, her design and resources and talk about how they fit in the game and perhaps where she could be played efficiently, as well as looking into some of her story details along the ride. Sombra is a nimble flanker that excels at close to medium range and skirmishing kind of gameplay. Her closest analog is currently Tracer, although she does a number of things very differently, and can be played in two real major ways that I can see. While Tracer's main objective is to kill the enemy, Sombra is more oriented on disruption and specific picks, creating openings for her allies on the front from the enemy backline and doing some rather interesting resource denial on top of all of that. If you didn't like enemy heroes that just got away, Genji, Tracer, so on, well, you might want to brace yourselves because Sombra is very difficult to pin down. Let's begin with a look at her abilities. Sombra's left click and her main weapon is her machine pistol. With a 60 round magazine that empties at around 4 seconds of continuous fire, she can deal surprising amounts of hurt at close range. The biggest thing I'm seeing with her is that her clip is surprisingly huge. Do not be afraid to hold down the left mouse button, especially at close range. Damage drop off is apparently very similar to a more spread happy Soldier 76, so the ramp up of spread is incredibly fast on the gun, quickly hitting maximum, but this is one of those cases of quantity, not perhaps quality. Positioning, of course, is going to be super important to maximize the strength of this formidable little gun in a big way. Luckily, there's a lot of ways of solving that. Still, do not be surprised to one-clip people with that entire 60 round magazine. But before we talk about positioning, let's talk about her right click, which is hack. Hack is a little bit complicated and I can understand people getting confused. You can hack enemies, health packs and turrets. Not sure if you can actually hack teleporters as well. We haven't seen anyone try that just yet, maybe someone will report back on it later, but who really gives a shit, teleporter's probably changing anyway. But hack does a number of interesting things. Let's start with hacking enemies. Enemies who are hacked lose use of their abilities. For example, Lucio will continue playing music but cannot switch music or amp it up while hacked. People will still be able to shoot and fight and stuff like that, but can't do things like flashbang or use Guardian Angel or use blink or recall or grappling hook for an entire 6 seconds. In short, a hacked enemy is going to be a little bit vulnerable. One or two things quickly, passives remain active. Pharah can still fly while hacked, for example. Mercy can probably still just get that self-healing boost. Junkrat will still explode when he dies. Second, you cannot hack through a barrier. But if you hack a Reinhardt, I don't think he can bring his barrier up anymore. That's rather good. Finally, if you hack someone with their ultimate ready, you can actually see it above their head as a little glowing ultimate ready circle. Cooldown on it is moderate. Don't expect to hack the entire enemy team, but you can absolutely keep a few enemies down in terms of abilities. I believe you could also do things like shut down defense matrix while it's up and hack a Genji while he deflects to stop a dash, so that's a good way of getting past divas and Genjis. The next thing with hacking is health kits. You can hack health packs around the map and basically claim it for your team. The enemy team cannot use it for 1 entire minute and he respawns far faster as well. This is bigger than you think. Some attacking points and defensive positions can really come down to controlling health packs and using health packs well, especially on control point map. Things like the health pack in the cafe on Hollywood can be massive for teams looking to stay alive a little bit longer. With Sombra on your side, expect to take it over a lot more. And you can hack as many health packs as the cooldowns allow, so basically 5 health packs as it's got a 12-second cooldown at the moment, so hey, 5 into 60, and it's hacked for 60 seconds, so that's a bit of math for you guys. Small note, you cannot hack a hacked enemy health pack, so there's no flipping them back and forth, for example. You only really need to deny 2 in most locations, so yeah, taking that over is pretty damn amazing. Finally, hacking stuns turrets for about 10 seconds. One thing though with hack is if you take damage from any source, then you stop doing the hack. Hacking takes about 2 seconds to get off fully. So trying to take over a turret and it just turning and shooting you means that you can't stop it, for example. Hacking requires, you guessed it, positioning and maybe a little teamwork in the case of a turret. Next up, the most divisive ability she has, THERMOPTIC CAMO. Fans of Ghost in the Shell will recognize this one immediately. THERMOPTIC CAMO makes Sombra completely invisible for 6 seconds to the enemy team unless you're right up close and personal, then you'll see like a purple shimmer. Or if Widowmaker or Hanzo have their visor or sonic arrow active. While invisible, you move around faster as a bonus, but of course it has some major drawbacks. Taking damage of any kind breaks the stealth, and you cannot pass through people either. Spammy enemies with splash like Junkrat or persistent sources of damage like Winston and May will really cause you issues. And one more thing quickly, turrets will ignore you while you're invisible, although not too sure on Symmetras, but I imagine that they will as well. One or two things as well on top of all of this. First, in the BlizzCon build, you could actually capture points while invisible. You could also contest while invisible. Actually capturing seems, well, kind of OP, but contesting seems in line with other things like Wraithform or Ice Block at the very least, and it's counterable by just spamming damage over the point. The big thing with this is it isn't TF2. Once on cooldown, it isn't a meter that refills like Spies. It's going to stay on cooldown for 6 seconds. Using it a short while and then breaking out of invisibility is actually really going to cost you. Next up is Translocate to finish off Sombra's evasion and repositioning. Translocate works like, well, the Translocator from Unreal Tournament. You throw down a small beacon that you can teleport to upon activation a second time. The beacon lasts 15 seconds upon use, and when you use it, you get a 6-second cooldown. As far as I can tell, you basically have two real options with this ability. First is using it like Blink. Throw it during combat to quickly reposition yourself against the enemy, because it's a thrown projectile, which means you can use it to get to all kinds of little interesting areas. Another interesting tidbit is that it bounces off walls, so tossing it to bounce around a corner is absolutely a thing you can do. Translocate can also be used while invisible, meaning you can rapidly redeploy and get behind enemy lines. These two abilities means that Sombra can basically get anywhere extremely quickly and should be used to do just that. I've highlighted a few times that positioning is key, so let's spend a moment now talking about positioning. With Sombra, you'll probably want to set yourself up before really engaging. Hacking a target before fighting is going to be much more useful than trying to hack during a fight, for example. Trying to hack a Reinhardt from the front or even behind is going to be a bit tricky as well, but above means that he has to try and track you above him on top of everything else and then lose his shield if he drops that for a moment. Taking high ground, securing yourself a health pack or two, and then placing a Translocator to retreat to is probably going to set you up nicely for any fights you get into. Because, of course, that is the other way of using it, recalling rapidly to get out of a fight, similar to Tracer. Interesting tidbit, but a hacked Sombra can currently still translocate even while hacked. Oh, and also, before you think about it, you cannot destroy the beacon, it isn't like a Venom Mine. Defense Matrix can catch it though, and Genji can reflect it too. Hopefully, you don't change sides when you come out the other side, although it wouldn't be entirely out of character. Still, this makes her incredibly slippery. Translocate, stealth, pick up health packs, and live in the enemy backline. This gets dangerous considering, well, her passive. It's insane, it's so good. When the enemy dips under 50% hit points, they become visible to Sombra's Opportunist power, highlighting them for her and her only to see. This of course doesn't mean that you can't get on voice comms and tell everyone, hey, yeah, this guy's super low and he's hiding back here. This means that if someone's retreating to the back lines for a health kit, A, you've already hacked the health kit so he's not going to find anything, and B, you know they are vulnerable and you have a wall hack against them so you can position yourself nice and easily, giving you a huge edge, getting close to them and kill quickly. Sombra in my mind becomes your cleanup. She makes it hard for the enemy to do what they want and makes surviving for a long time difficult. And you can hunt down wounded enemies with ease. Of course, where she really gets potent is her ultimate, and her ultimate is a little bit different for an assault. EMP is a rather huge ability that, well, hacks everything it hits. On top of that, it also destroys, note the wording, destroys barriers and shields. 2000 hit point barrier? Gone, blown up, annihilated. Sound barrier drops? Gone, destroyed. Sombra annihilates shielding in a big way, creating a massive opening if a team tries to, say, stay clumped behind a Reinhardt barrier to hold a choke point. 6 seconds of time to do whatever your team likes, basically, is a pretty huge way of crowbarring open the door. The one flaw is that you have to be in line of sight, but for Sombra, getting into position shouldn't be too difficult. It'll also cut off various abilities. Channel powers are stopped, just like hacking, like High Noon and Whole Hog, but it seems activated abilities are not stopped, like Recon Visor, Tactical Visor, and Dragon Blade. Stopping Genji dashing, for example, could be helpful, but don't expect to blow up his sword in his hands. He can't draw it, but will still have it once drawn. Make sense? Good. Like I said, Sombra in my mind is your backline harass. She wants to get behind the enemy team and into the squishies there and be too much trouble to catch and hunt down. She gets chased, recall, stealth, scoop up a couple of health packs, has an opening, hack 1 or 2 people and then swoop in for some quick kills. While Tracer wants to sort of be the person who dances around through the middle of engagements, Sombra is more patient, more plotted, fight until the tables turn, then get the hell out of dodge, while making it hard for the enemy to stay alive long term. That all sounds pretty terrifying, right? Right, but Big butt, like Widowmaker sized butt. There's 6 characters in Overwatch on each team. Let's say you've got a 2-2-2 lineup. Sombra naturally will be one of your DPS. You've got to be assassinating fairly consistently to make it work, and to do that, people need to drop low. For people to drop low, you've got to be fighting. If you're fighting and trying to be fancy and wait too much, you'll be like a Widowmaker waiting for the perfect shot, or a Genji afraid to actually fight people. Let me spin it another way. Sombra's in your backline. She bumps into McCree around the corner. She's dead. She loses that fight unless he misses his flash or unless something catastrophic goes wrong with his aim. Hacking him takes too long, as it takes about 2 seconds, and he can outduel her at close range. I think Sombra is going to be utterly despised by a lot of players at launch. Killing the enemy is one of the best ways to win in Overwatch, and she does it in a fairly complicated, fine-tuned way. If you're trying to go in the front, you're probably not going to get a lot out of a hack or a stealth. If you're going into the rear lines, then you've got to have a team that can create opportunities or hack the right targets for rapid kills. Her skill cap, however, means she could be an absolute nightmare. The thing with EMP is it's enormous in terms of its area. It's hard to screw up, and it crowbars open a team in a way that no other assault can, as mostly they just kill people. So Tracer could bomb and then maybe follow up on a Reinhardt and assassinate in that way, or Genji could cleave out that backline, but Sombra disables them in a way that nobody else really does. The team's follow-up has to be just good enough to make it work, which, let's face it, makes it hard to get value on low levels. Similar to how Anna was loathed and is still loathed by a lot of players for feeling ineffective on launch, her abilities were fiddly to use, and other characters did similar in a simpler way. Sombra could fall into that trap. If you want to grind ranks up from, say, low gold, Tracer might be easier, being more self-sufficient. Let's talk counters anyway. We're going to see 1,000 Sombras, or maybe not see, ho ho ho, so you're probably wondering how do you handle that. Winston destroys her. Stealth becomes ineffective, and all she can do is translocate away. I'd say Mei also does very similar. She can only translocate and retreat away from a Mei, making it very hard for her to find her prey. She'll devastate Reinhardt and Lucio, though EMP to counter Soundbarrier is basically the effect of having an instant death blossom on the enemy team, not to mention the EMP effect itself on top of all of that. At the end of the day, Sombra was built to fulfill the hacker in control archetype. She has the information, she has the positioning, she has time to set up and prepare. Use it, plan, set yourself up, then scoop in and get a couple of kills. Let's touch on lore briefly to close this out. Sombra is, well, just like I said, she's the hacker, the modern cyberpunky hacker, flash and showboaty, not someone in a hoodie in a basement, chewing down Doritos and Mountain Dew and slowly learning information about the government. We've got an in-game story and a nice animated short to build from, but let's start with general archetype. She's Talon, but not. She's the manipulator, the brash, confident youth, flaunting all of this skill. Things seem easy to her more likely than not, and that gives her room to have fun. That said, despite being Talon, she isn't entirely without moral compass. Her story states that she gained her hacking skills to survive in the post-Omnic crisis Mexico, and joined Los Muertos out of a self-styled revolution to try and remove the corrupt officials that were benefiting in the rebuilding and restructuring of that country. She then found something far too big for her to handle, a global conspiracy, and she had to go into hiding as a result, reinventing herself along the way. Coming back then bigger and badder than ever, she picked up the attention of Talon with her flash style and her anti-organization agenda, who then furnished her with more gear and funding. Now she continues to strike at these large corporations, and judging by her appearance in the short, isn't quite fully in line with Talon's goals necessarily either. If I had to go D&D alignment, I'd say chaotic neutral. She has a goal and she strives for it, but isn't afraid of stepping on toes on the way. And while her goal is ultimately moral, she is fighting for the good of the little people in Mexico. She's not above ruining a few lives. Chaotic because, well, flamboyance and extravagant display don't really lend themselves to the lawful, and she actively avoids going through honest routes, favouring things like blackmail and threats of larger public disorder and disarray, rather than things like legal exposure or trust in authority. Being a Talon agent, I'm interested to see how she interacts with a lot of the cast. It was about time Widowmaker got someone else on her side after all, even if she did ruin a perfectly fine kill. Of course, we'll talk about the short later, but for now I think we've gone over Sombra in enough detail. Harassment, plotting, backline destruction, and making the enemy feel unsafe. Do all of that and you'll find the victories rolling in. Toodles.